Okay, hi boys and girls. So I am going to go over this biotic and abiotic um, slideshow. So if you haven't done this yet, I just wanted to go over with you how to get to it. So I'm in Canvas. So if you go to your dashboard and then you go to Science, and then here, every week it's going to look exactly like this and tell you what to do down here. And then if you click here, this will take you directly to your home learning module. And so most of you know if you clicked on the assignment and then you clicked here, it would force you to make a copy. And so you're going to open your own copy. And that's a little bit different than how we've been doing it in the past. But this is totally your own copy. You could even put your name here if you wanted. So I'll put Mrs. Mullins copy. You don't have to do that, but you can. So I just wanted to go over this. If you turn this in, you got credit. Excuse my nose, boys and girls, by the way. I'm super stuffy. But if you turn this in, you got credit. And so what the screencast is meant to do is to help you check your answers, just to kind of self-regulate and see how you're doing. So this is a whole new learning goal for us, PS 10, Priority Standard 10. And it says, I can interpret the cause and effect relationships between resource availability and interactions among organisms in multiple ecosystems. So basically, that is just looking at cause and effect. So for example, if you have a deer habitat and a company comes in and tears down the forest and builds something there, how does that affect that ecosystem and the resource availability, for example, for those deer? And that's just one small example. But basically, looking at the cause and effect relationship between resource availability, food, water, shelter, and interactions among organisms, which is our next slideshow where we're looking at predatory relationships and things like that, in all sorts of different kinds of ecosystems, desert ecosystems, forest ecosystems, marine ecosystems, and so on. So the first thing I asked you to do is just kind of start thinking about what you already knew about this word ecosystem. And I asked you to type that in here. So maybe you knew a lot, maybe you didn't know anything at all. That's okay. This is pre-learning. So pre-learning, you're just kind of setting your thinking about where you are. So the very first thing that we needed to look at, I'm going to put this in present mode here. The very first thing that we needed to think about is what is biotic and abiotic. So if we look at biotic, it says the living things interacting in an ecosystem are called biotic factors. So bio is a prefix meaning life. So you've probably seen that in biology, the study of life. A biography, where somebody writes about their own life, right? I'm sorry, where somebody writes about someone's life. Abiotic is the non-living things in an ecosystem, and these are called abiotic factors. And that prefix before biotic, a, means without or not. So if biotic means life, abiotic means without life. So that's the difference between biotic and abiotic. All right, so what I did is I wanted you to just basically watch this video, and I know there were lots of issues with the video playing from here, so that's why I added in the YouTube link. So you basically just click here, and then what I wanted you to do based on this is just to look and say, what were 4 things in the video that were living? And list 5 examples of things that weren't living. So let's just take a look at the video, and then we'll come back and answer that question together.
Welcome to 3-2 Wonder. I'm Dr. Jeff, and today I'm going
Abiotic and biotic factors. An ecosystem contains living and non-living things. The ecosystem has many examples of the interaction between the living and the non-living. Living things in an ecosystem are called biotic factors. Living things include plants, animals, bacteria, fungi, and more. The non-living parts of the ecosystem are called abiotic factors. Some non-living things are sun, temperature, water, atmospheric gases, and soil. Fungi.
All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back because we've already answered our questions right there. So what were some biotic factors, some living things? So we had plants. I type in plants. We have animals. We have bacteria. Believe it or not, all those little bacteria that make you sick and give you like strep throat and bacterial infections are little living organisms. And then we had fungi, which is like mushrooms. Okay, so those are living or biotic factors. And then our abiotic factors.
More. The non-living parts of the ecosystem are called abiotic factors. Some non-living things are sun, temperature, water, atmospheric gases, and soil.
Okay, so we had sun, temperature, water, atmospheric gases, and then what was the last one? Soil. Now, could we have things in soil that are living or things in water that are living? Absolutely, right? We have fish that live in water. Those are biotic, but the water itself is not living, so it's abiotic. We can have earthworms and bugs inside of soil, but the soil itself is abiotic. So then what I wanted you to do is to think about a desert ecosystem and then go in and list 3 biotic interactions and then list 3 abiotic and biotic interactions. So what we might have here, just for example, is if we had 2 animals competing for food. So that is an interaction. An interaction would be one or more things. A biotic form interacting with another biotic form. Where an abiotic and biotic interaction would be something interacting, a living thing interacting with a non-living thing. So for example, we might have a desert lizard, like a monitor lizard or something, drinking water. So that is how you would fill out this section. Okay, so then what I asked you to do here is I wanted you to basically drag and drop these into the correct box. So if we're looking at, for example, a rabbit, would a rabbit be living or non-living? So rabbit's living, so we're going to put that here in biotic. Tornado is not living. Hurricane, not living. Sunlight, not a living organism. Fungi, yes, living organism. Dirt, not living. Wind, oops, let me undo that. Why do I keep doing that? Okay, here we go. Let's try to drag it from the bottom. All right. Rocks, not living. Wind, not living. Grass, living. Sand, non-living. moss, living, elephant, living. Lichens are living. So let's just Google lichens so you know what a lichen is. So it's kind of this mossy, it's like a plant. So you see that. You've seen that, I'm sure, in the forest when you're hiking or taking like a forest walk or something. So that is living. Now if we're talking about decomposers, so it's an organism, especially a soil, bacterium, fungus, or invertebrate that decomposes organic material. So if it's an organism, is it living or non-living? Definitely living. Precipitation, non-living or abiotic. And then let's look up producers. Hopefully this doesn't give us the definition of movie producers. Let's see, let's say ecosystem producers. Okay, so producers are organisms that create food from inorganic matter. So things like plants, lichens, and algae. So again, producers are living, so they're biotic. So there's your answers for Organize It. Now illustrated, I'm not going to do with you here, but I asked you to draw a quick sketch of a forest ecosystem. And then I wanted you to draw inside of that 5 living things, 5 non-living things, and you can go back to all these slides to give you examples of those to help you know what's living versus non-living. So if you drew the sun, that would be abiotic. If you drew plants, that would be biotic. So 5 and 5. And then again with the interactions, I wanted you to draw 5 interactions between biotic and abiotic factors. So a fox drinking water from the river. And then biotic factors competing. So 2 biotic factors competing for 1 abiotic factor. So maybe you have a deer and a raccoon both competing for shelter. My examples are probably terrible, but now if you felt overwhelmed by this, I would say do at least 2 of each. Okay, just get 2 of each in there. Because maybe you're not an illustrator, maybe being at home it's just extra hard, but I would definitely challenge myself if I could. If you felt comfortable, especially if you're a great sketch artist, and then you can get all of that stuff in there. For the Imagine It, so we're just kind of repeating the same things over and over again. This is just like our stations that we do in class. In fact, this comes from the same person who creates the stations that we do. These are just stations on slides. So with our stations, a lot of things are repetitive. So here, imagine a mountain ecosystem and what are 3 abiotic factors. So if we're talking about, and we live in the mountains, right? So if you're in Park City, you're in the mountains. So what are 3 non-living things? So a river, right? Trees, and then maybe rocks. So these are all abiotic things. So what are 3 biotic factors? Deer, mountain lions, squirrels. Am I spelling squirrels right? There we go. And then you were to do the same thing with a pond ecosystem. So I don't want to give you all the answers with that, but hopefully you have a good idea of, if you think about a pond, we actually have a pond right next to Ecker Hill, right next to our school there, between the ranch and us. There's a little pond there. So imagine a pond ecosystem, and what would be 3 abiotic factors? Obviously the water, right, would be one. There's plants in a pond, kelp, that kind of thing. So, well, kelp's going to be in an ocean, right? But think about, you can Google this as well to help you. So if you're not sure and you're not really aware of a pond ecosystem, then totally Google it and then get some answers put into there. Now for this, this was probably a little tricky. So you were supposed to read through the article, and then I'm not going to give you the answers for this because the answers are here. Oh, I'm sorry. That was with Assess It. So you're supposed to read through here, and I can actually give you the answers for Read It. So how does a decrease in abiotic factors impact the population growth in an ecosystem? So in other words, say we have a decrease in food and water. What is going to happen with the population growth? So even now as humans, we're probably seeing this now, right? If we are running out of food and water, then what's going to happen with the population of an ecosystem? It's going to decrease. So if we ran out of food and we didn't have any food at all, then we couldn't survive, right? So our population would start to decrease. So what determines the carrying capacity in an ecosystem? So if we go back here and we're looking for what a carrying capacity is. So competition for resources like food and space cause the growth rate to stop increasing and the population size levels off. This is the carrying capacity. The carrying capacity is the maximum population size that can be supported in a particular area without destroying the habitat. Limiting factors determine the carrying capacity of a population. So limiting factors would be things like lack of food, lack of shelter, lack of water. So what determines the carrying capacity in an ecosystem? Back here again, limiting factors determine the carrying capacity of a population. So it's those limiting factors. So basically what that's saying is if the carrying capacity is the maximum amount of population that can take place, that's because depending on how much food, water, shelter there is, will also determine the carrying capacity. So if there's not a whole lot of food, water, and shelter, it's not going to be a high carrying capacity, right? Because basically people or organisms in that ecosystem need those things to survive. But if there's a high amount of those factors, food, water, shelter, then the carrying capacity will be high. If you need to pause at any time and take a break, please do. And then you can always come back to the video. So what is an example of two organisms competing for an abiotic factor? So two biotic things competing for an abiotic. So let's look through. Two different species of insects competing for leaves from trees. So two insects competing for leaves. Are leaves biotic or abiotic? Let's leave that there and look at the others. Two different species of mammals, both biotic, competing for small rodents to eat. So that's two biotic competing for a biotic. So that's all biotic. So no, that wouldn't be right. Two different species of, I don't know why that says bird. That's so silly. Competing for berries. So, and then two different species of mammals competing for the same water source. So if we go back here, leaves and berries, are those living or non-living? Are those biotic or abiotic? So those are actually living things, living organisms. So they're both biotic. Water is abiotic. So this D is the correct answer. Two different species of mammals competing for the same water source. All right, what happens to abiotic factors in an ecosystem when biotic populations increase? So, if you have an increase in population, what's going to happen to the water and the shelter and the soil and things like that? Okay, so abiotic resources become more scarce. Scarce meaning not as many, they start to go away. There will always be enough abiotic sources in an ecosystem. Well, we know living on planet Earth, that is not true, right? We aren't always going to have enough water. Biotic organisms will never reach a carrying capacity. That's not true either. There's always a limit in a population because there's always going to be limited resources. Abiotic factors will eventually take over biotic factors. So basically, these non-living things will eventually, I guess, kill off or eliminate biotic factors. And that's not necessarily true. So basically, when you have a population increase, a biotic population increase, the abiotic resources become less and less. They become more scarce. So A is your answer for that. All right, so this should say shallow. Compare the terms biotic and abiotic factors. Provide examples of each from a shallow ocean ecosystem. So here you're supposed to define biotic and abiotic, living and non-living, and then give some examples of each from a shallow ocean ecosystem. Again, if you weren't sure, Google. You could totally Google that. Explain a situation where two different species could compete for the same abiotic resource. So this happens all the time. So you're thinking about, think about two animals in an ocean ecosystem and a marine ecosystem competing for space or shelter, or something of that sort. You could do a forest ecosystem, you could do a desert ecosystem, whatever you prefer. And then for assess it, for this one you need to be in present mode to check yourself. Okay? That's what it says right here. So if we were saying prairie dogs live in complex tunnels underground and compete with other herbivores, herbivores are animals that eat plants, right, in the ecosystem, which is the abiotic factor in this situation, so the non-living thing? So let's say we said prairie dogs. Oops, nope, that's incorrect. So we click here and it takes us back again. Underground habitat. Yes, that's correct. So when you get the correct answer, if you get the incorrect answer and click here, it's always going to just take you back until you get the correct answer. And then once you click here, that will take you to the next question. But you have to be in present mode. So if I go out of present mode and I try to do this, it's not going to work. So I have to come up here and go to present and then just test myself through all the way to the end. So that's how you do that. So hopefully, boys and girls, this kind of helped you better understand biotic versus abiotic. Hopefully you'll go back and check your slideshow. I prefer to do this video and let you go back and see what you got correct and what you got incorrect versus going and giving you each individual feedback on the slideshow, because then you would wait for me forever with 160 students. And I don't want you waiting too long while you're processing this information. So hopefully that will help you. I am going to do one of these screencasts as well for reading 6.4.1, and then I will continue to do this each week, so you can just go back and check. I miss you all very, very, very much. I miss you all giving me a hard time. Ha ha ha. And I hope to see you soon, and I hope that you're staying healthy and that you're getting some exercise and that you're enjoying your family time. We don't always get family time, so that's really, really nice. Be good to your siblings, be good to your parents, and we will talk soon, and continue to email me with your questions. You're all doing fantastic, especially considering that this is new for all of us. So keep up the good work. All right.